Hey guys, so I just want to give a quick overview of the two knight builds that I've been playing with in this closed beta. I haven't been playing on the Korean or Chinese versions of the game, so this is just based off my experience playing in the last 2 weeks of knight. I played Berserker in the first beta, so I have no prior experience to this, but before I go on though, bear in mind that I'm missing one skill point right now because I don't have 500 trophies yet, but I have all the other ones that are available in this beta. So the builds I have, one with shield toss and the other without. So this is going to be the standard one, the one with shield toss. This is what you're going to use in dungeons, hard mode dungeons, and raids. You're always going to have someone, if you bring a knight to your group, that uses shield toss. Always. You aren't going to avoid that. The debuff is just too good to miss, right, honestly. So when you use it, it's a 6.4% decrease in the enemy's defense. Because enemies often have a lot of armor and magic resist, that can be more than just a 6.4% damage increase for your group. And because it's for every player as well, it ends up being a huge boost to your team's DPS. It's worth it both in dungeons where there's only 4 of you, and it's especially valuable in raids where there's 10 people all attacking the boss at once. So always want to prioritize this. Okay, and the DPS skills then. The DPS skills are the same for both builds. You're gonna prioritize Typhoon Slash above all else. This is your main spirit spender. You basically just spin around. You can move while casting it, which is super nice. And that's what you're gonna be using most of the time for your damage. And then when you don't have enough spirit to cast Typhoon Slash, you're gonna be using Divine Strike whenever you can off cooldown. And when that's on cooldown, you'll then use Crosscut. The downside of both of these skills are that they root you in place. So unlike Typhoon Slash, you can't dodge out of mechanics while attacking like this. So occasionally, if you want to stick to a boss, or like on Chaos Devrek where he's doing the laser, if you don't have any sort of blocks up and you have to like run around constantly to avoid getting hit, then you can use Iron Defense for that. Normally it's not a good idea if you're trying to go for DPS to use this because it reduces your attack by 25%, but the spirit regen's really nice. It allows you to just spam Typhoon Slash far more often, and if you're having to move about constantly, it's worth it to use it just for that. It's not the worst trade-off, honestly, to just circle around the enemy or chase them down and keep spamming the skill instead of casting nothing. So yeah, just toggle that and turn it off as soon as the boss is then still, and you can continue using Crosscut and Divine Strike while it's rooted in place. Okay, so other skills. Drill Thrust. This is mostly just a mobility thing, but you can use it as well the same way as Divine Strike as a filler. So when you don't have enough spirit for Typhoon Slash, you can, after you've spent it all, you can use Divine Strike. You could also use Drill Thrust, and then you go into auto attacking with your Crosscut. The other thing is just mobility, so you can use your charges, and when you run out, you can use this as well. Or if it's super far away, you can dash once and then Drill Thrust instead. Or you basically just want to prioritize this even over your dashes if you can. It has a bit more of a cast, but if you can hit the boss or an enemy with it, it's definitely a DPS increase over just hitting them with a shield charge. Okay, so next, Iron Shield. Mostly just taking this as a dependency for shield toss in this build. It's not super strong in my opinion. It reduces a lot of the incoming damage, but with only 4 points, it's not that huge. Like 40%, it's fairly significant, but you can't attack while doing it. Generally, it would be a lot more important if you had a taunt skill and you were able to maintain aggro of a boss always, But since there is no real aggro mechanic in this game, from what I can tell, it's just random who gets attacked. I don't really find myself using it very often. It can protect you from getting thrown in the air or knocked back though, so I would experiment on certain attacks with that. Every now and again it can just prevent you from getting CC'd, and that might help increase your DPS in the long run if you just pop this temporarily and then go back to attacking. Let's see, Shield Wall. This is just a little bit of resistances that you can give to everyone. Pretty minor, honestly. It has a bit of a cast time, so it's a DPS loss to cast it while you're fighting an enemy, when you could be just attacking them. It's quite short, not that important, but maybe if you can, while you're running towards a boss, cast it then, so you're not really losing time where you could be attacking a boss, or it's during an M1 phase or whatever. Or just save it for when you know there's some sort of unpreventable damage, you're going to be tanking a hit, just reduce that damage a little bit, put a little less pressure on your healer, and he'll appreciate that, or she. Warhorn. On this build, because you've only got 3 points and it's not that huge, I think in dungeons it's never really worth to use this unless you have some other buffs up. So like Priest has a skill that's on a 3-minute cooldown, if I recall correctly. I don't remember the name, unfortunately, but it spawns a big white circle on the ground that everyone has to stand in, and it increases the outgoing magic and physical damage by everyone, their attack speed, their spirit regen, and it's huge. And I think in that sort of burst, then in a dungeon casting Warhorn would be worth, and if you can get everyone in it, and everyone's going to be grouped up for that, so it's good then. Or if you're in a position where you can't attack, say on Pyros, everyone's hiding from the laser, you're stuck in a hole, your attacks can't actually hit up a tile, so you just cast Warhorn when you're about to jump out, so then you can get some more damage down then, and it's like you're casting something worthwhile to your team then, and increasing damage that way. Even if you're doing direct damage, you're increasing damage later with that buff. So that's the use for that. We'll get to more of it in Raid in a second. And then 2 more really important skills here. Really important. That's the main reason why you even go for Warhorn here, is just for the Bulwark and Defender of the Faith. In some dungeons you might be able to get away with it just having 1 point, but the reduced cooldown by putting more points into it is really nice, and for raids you're gonna definitely have to invest more points into it so that you can actually get all of your allies fit within that. We're in a kind of awkward spot right now because with the 50 cap you're only gonna hit 9 allies on Defender of the Faith. You need to be 52 apparently to get all 10, and that includes yourself, so one guy in a raid is going to get screwed by that apparently, which is a little bit unfortunate. But Bulwark, you can invest I think all 10 points into this skill, or 9 at least then, yeah, but it's not really worth in my opinion to go for all 9 because the last point only gives you a 5-second cooldown reduction. If you go 7, you'll get enough allies to meet the requirement for hitting everyone in a raid, but I think it's worth to put an 8th point just for the 10-second cooldown reduction. It can be really nice to just be able to cast that more frequently, or be sure that it's going to be off cooldown in time, and you're not really going to lose much damage by sacrificing 1 skill point to get that cooldown reduction. So put them points back. So that's this build. I don't really use Tornado Slash in this, it's just a requirement for Divine Strike. And Warhorn build. This is what I think you'll use if you're a second knight in a raid group. So because Shield Toss doesn't stack in intensity, you would just overwrite the other knight's buff or debuff on the boss. There's no point in 2 of you bringing it, so you have a bunch of spare points. You've already got 3 points into Warhorn on this build, so you're just going to put 7 more into this to max that out. So if you're in a raid, it's worth it, right? You have so many people, it's going to be worth at this level to have a 12% modifier, that often. You use Warhorn as much as you can on the group, and you'll probably be using it on this, even though it's a lower amount. You'll be using this as well, the Warhorn there, because in a raid you have enough people for it to be worth always. But you should coordinate so that they don't override each other, and always prioritize this one, because this is the big damage one. Now that you've invested all these points into it, it's twice the modifier as the Shield Tusk guy's one. But because you already have 3 points in that, it's only 7 points, and you've gained 10 from this, and up to 4 from removing Iron Shield, so you can invest those other points into maxing out Crosscut, so you're going to have a bit more personal DPS there. Whenever you add a spirit for this, you get more damage on your auto attacks. And then for the other points, I love 1 point in Iron Shield just for the ability to prevent some CC, but if you don't need that, you can put it into Divine Strike for a little more damage. If you have the last skill point as well, you could then put 2 points in this, or you could put 1 point in this and 1 point in Iron Shield. Or the other option, which might be better, I don't know, so put 1 point to Drill Thrust, and then you can put the last point into Longsword Mastery. If you have a really good sword, then it's probably worth. If you have some insane like plus 15 longsword, then yeah, I'd definitely do that over putting the 2 points into Divine Strike. But for now, I'm going with this variant. I don't think it matters too much what you do with the last couple points. Personal preference for the most part. Yeah, so they're both very similar. You do the same rotation. It's just going to be that when you're the second knight in a raid, you'll prioritize Warhorn, with having more points into that because this debuff doesn't stack. If you only have one knight in a raid, then you'll just continue using this build. As far as gear is concerned, I didn't kill the raid yet in this beta because there's not enough active people in my guild, so I'm still wearing Balrog stuff, but stat priority wise, weapon attack is the most important by far. Always want to prioritize that. And then after that, piercing, physical piercing, boss damage, total damage, that sort of stuff is all good. Piercing for the most part is the best, then physical piercing. Yeah, you always want to get that stuff. And attack speed is okay, but not a huge amount. Attack is also good. And for your stat points, your attribute points, you want to put them all into strength because that's your primary attribute. In this beta, I don't think it's possible to get enough attribute points that you'll max this out, so you just put everything into strength. There's no real question about that. So yeah, I'll just head over to the Chaos Raid area and show the rotation a bit, I guess. Alright, so for the rotation, we're just going to start with Shield Toss, then immediately start spamming Typhoon Slash, go into Divine Strike, and then fill with our Crosscut, as we said before. Just using Typhoon Slash as soon as we have Spirit, and then whenever our debuff is like 1 second away from expiring, then we're going to prioritize using that above all else. Make sure that we always keep the Shield Toss buff on the boss. Also, it's just going to decrease our group DPS more than any personal DPS gain we get from delaying it to cast extra attacks. And that's pretty much it. Alright, so the last thing that I wanted to go over was how you can utilize Bulwark and Defender of the Faith to invuln things to your team on both Pyrus and Balrog. I won't cover anything for Chaos Devrak because I haven't personally killed that boss yet, and I want to leave that up to you guys to figure out close to release, because that's the hardest piece of content, at least that's in this beta. Perhaps we will get something harder at release, we don't know yet, but for Pyros, there's two places where I think it can be really useful, and those are both in the second phase. It can be used in the first phase, but it's most valuable in the second phase for both the laser and the raw. So in first phase, you do get both laser and raw, but it's easier to avoid them. The raw, you can climb down into the area where the pools are to cleanse your burning stacks. But in the second phase, there's nowhere really to do that. You could just jump off the edge and fall, and you get teleported back up, and that's about the only thing you can really do to avoid the stun, other than using Bulwark or Defender of the Faith to on that. And the other place would be the laser. You can do the same thing for the laser in the first phase, where you jump down into the area where the Condi cleanses are, or after the second raw, there are holes in the ground where you can hide to avoid the laser there. But in the second phase, you will always have to jump up the pillar for the first laser, because there are no holes in the ground to hide in. So I think that using Bulwark or Defender of the Faith there for that first laser in the second phase can really save you a couple valuable seconds if you're pushing for a fast time, because then your whole team doesn't have to jump all the way up the top of the pillar. You can all just stay stacked and continue doing DPS on the boss, and I think that's probably a good place to use it. And then for Balrog, there's 3 places where you can use it. You can use it for the hook. When the pillars fall down from the ceiling, instead of jumping up on top of those, you can stay in melee, and everyone continues to attack the boss right there, and you don't have to fiddle around with jumping up on these silly little platforms to avoid the hook. You can just stand there and M1 that for your team. The second will be after that first time he does the hook, he will eventually get to a phase where he creates a big purple field encompassing the entire arena, and you want to use your Bulwark or Defender of the Faith as soon as you see the purple field appear for this one, because on the second tick it will stun the whole raid, the whole group. So you want to use it as early as possible. It doesn't really matter too much if you get hit by the last tick of damage, especially if you're a priest, because they can always heal up as long as they're not stunned, and it's really not that much of an issue. Just avoid the stuns, you can continue DPS, and that's the most important part. And then the third bit is another attack very similar to the last one, where he summons a big purple field that encompasses the whole raid, but now you'll also have things falling from the sky. And there'll also be an NPC there. The NPC will occasionally interrupt the boss as well. From what I've noticed, he will pretty much always stun on the second time that the boss does this attack. So you'll M1 on the first, and then the third, and so on. He'll get stunned every 30 seconds or so you can probably try base it off that. If you have the same amount of points into Bulwark and Defender of Faith as I do, though, you shouldn't have a problem using the skills every time, as long as you start with Bulwark, because that one has the shorter cooldown, and continue alternating from there. You should have at least one of them off cooldown every time, even if the NPC doesn't stun. But because of the things falling from the sky, you have a lot more damage pressure, and you want to spread your group out initially, and then after the first set of rocks has fallen, then you cast your Bulwark or Defender of the Faith, and everyone groups up on top of you to get the embalm for the rest of the attacks going forward. If you cast it too soon, then the last hit can really do a lot of damage, and if you have any squishy people on your team or people who aren't full health, then they're probably going to die. So this is already far longer than I ever expected this to be, but one thing I had to say before I end this is that you should always place a Scion of Light in your home instance for the 4% piercing buff. It lasts 1 hour, it's not removed when you die, it's really strong. But you can only get it from placing one in your own home instance. I don't believe you can go to someone else's and take it from there, so just make sure that you have one of these in your house, and then whenever you go to do a dungeon or a raid, make sure you grab this buff before you head there, and yeah, it's a nice little damage increase and it's free, so make sure you get one of these.